Namaskar. Welcome to my channel, Journey of Constitution of India. This is part 1 of Article 19, Right to Freedom series. Originally, there were 7 rights to freedom. Now it is 6. The right to property is deleted from Constitution by 44th Amendment. To say it is just 6, but in reality, this is a fertile ground for cultivating various other another rights of similar nature, and our judiciary with the changing time has cultivated various facets of the right of freedom. Let me share with you an important information about Article 19. There is another Article 19 of the similar nature in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It states that everyone has right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinion without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through media and regardless of frontiers. This resolution was adopted on 10th December 1948, and this was the period when even our constitution was being framed in India. Friends, the story of development of these rights in Article 19 of our Constitution is a story of development of India as a nation state, a welfare state, a welfare society, and evolution of democracy in India. To understand it, we have to understand the priorities of the framers of Constitution, thereafter the priorities of legislature and executive, and then interpretation by the judiciary. Let me share you before making this video. I asked my friends, I sent a WhatsApp message to my friends and asked their opinion, suggestion, and about the questions from them that I'll be incorporating in this video. So one of my friend asked me, what were the priorities of framer of constitution at the time of making of this largest written constitution? As per my understanding, the framers of constitution had three main priorities. First and foremost was the unity and sovereignty of the nation. Second, social change to achieve justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity in the society. Third, establishment of a democracy with well-defined structure of government capable of delivering the first two which I discussed, I told you, unity and social change. Another relevant questions asked by one of my friend was, from where the framers got spiritual and moral strength to devise these 7 rights of freedom. What I understand, the values and experiences of our freedom struggle, which accrued during the time with our great leaders, that gave them the spiritual and moral strength to frame this, to devise and to frame and to incorporate these 7 rights of freedom. Another important point is, at the time when our country got independence, there were various changes taking place in the world. And in some of the countries, the democracy had proved successful, and that for a century they have developed as an institution of governance. Then the another questions comes, what was the international events which worked as beacon light or guidelines for the framers of constitution while drafting right of freedoms? The development of such constitutionally granted fundamental human rights in India was inspired historically from various examples, such as England's Bill of Rights 1689. The second was the United States Bill of Rights 1787, and the France Declaration of Rights of Man 1789. Hope you remember that the war cry of the French Revolution was equality, liberty, and fraternity. And this was also incorporated in our constitution to create the social equality, liberty of individual, and fraternity among the citizens. In this background, let us start Article 19 of freedom. It is the most important and key article which embodies the basic freedom. Article 19 states all citizens shall have in Article 19, it starts, all citizens shall have A. Right to freedom of speech and expression. B. Right to assemble peacefully and without arms. C. Right to assemble right to form or association or unions. D. Right to move freely throughout the territory of India. E. Right to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India. F, which was omitted. It was the right to acquire, hold, and dispose of property. It was omitted by 44th Amendment. And G, the right to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade, or business. In this part of video, we will particularly deal discussing with the right to freedom of speech. The first thing that comes to mind when we start with the right to freedom of speech is what is the philosophy of this freedom. The philosophy of this freedom and of this article lies in the preamble of the Constitution, where a solemn resolve is made to secure to all its citizens liberty of thought and expression. With this philosophy in mind, the framers of the Constitution drafted the language of the various freedom of rights given in Article 19. This right is available to citizens of India and not of foreign national. The word citizen is comprehensively dealt in Part 2 of the Constitution. The freedom of speech under Article 19(1)(a) includes the right to express one's views and opinion at any issue through any medium, such as by words of mouth, writing, printing, picture, film, movie, blog, internet, website, anything. It's very inclusive. The right is, however, not absolute. Clause 2 of Article 19 allows government to frame laws to impose reasonable restrictions on the ground of security of state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency and morality, contempt of court, defamation, incitement or to any offense, and sovereignty and integrity of India. Whenever these reasonable restrictions of Article 19(2) is discussed, it is discussed with the reference of First Amendment 1951 when these words were put in the after amendment. This amendment was necessitated by the decision of Supreme Court in Ramesh Thapar versus State of Madras in the year 1950. Undoubtedly, the Ramesh Thapar case is a turning point in the evolution of right to freedom of speech and expression. I'll deal with this case in detail in my next video because it needs some time. It is interesting that whenever these reasonable restrictions come, usually people think that it was Pandit Nehru who put this by amendment or First Amendment in 1951. And this reasonable restriction is the brainchild of Pandit Nehru, which is not true. To understand it, let us see the original text of Article 19(2) before the First Amendment at the time the Constitution was adopted. It says, nothing in subclause A of clause 1 shall affect the operation of any existing law in so far as it relates to or prevents the state from making any law relating to libel, slander, defamation, contempt of court, or any matter which offends against decency or morality, or which undermines the security of or tends to overthrow the state. So these were the original language. So what we see that this ground of restrictions were already available in the original text of the 19 clause 2. So what after First Amendment the situation became and what the language were there. The words added were, in so far as such law imposes reasonable restrictions on the exercise of the right conferred in the said subclause. The next two grounds were added, public order and incitement of an offense. Later by 16th Amendment in 1963, another ground was added, and that was friendly relations with foreign states. The First Amendment was brought when the Constitution Assembly was working as provisional parliament, because it is the case of 1950-51. At that time, the Constitution Assembly has taken the shape of provisional parliament. So all the members of Constituent Assembly were the same, and their memory was fresh, whatever the discussion they had about it. So one of the member of Constituent Assembly was Pandit Thakur Das Bhargava. He was a member from East Punjab, and in fact he was a resident of Hisar district, today's Haryana. He suggested a way out by adding reasonable before restrictions, because he wanted to ensure that the court will have the final say and will be working as an ultimate guardian of the fundamental rights, and the same would not be in the hand of legislature and executive to mold and to curtail the fundamental rights of the people. So he wanted that court should have the final say in deciding the reasonable restrictions on the court, the restriction imposed by the executive or legislature. So it is important to note that it was after discussion, a detailed discussion, these reasonable restrictions were included in the wording of clause 2 of article 19. There is one important point, that when an emergency is proclaimed under 352, article 19 remains suspended. The constitution does not make any specific reference to freedom of press. So it was the protagonist of freedom of press always called it is a serious lapse on the part of drafting committee, which did not include the freedom of press or the word press in the article 19.2. However, the freedom of expression includes, because it is very comprehensive, so it includes the freedom of press also. And at that time, Dr. Ambedkar in this context had said on behalf of drafting committee that the editors or managers of press are all citizens of this country. And when they choose to write in newspaper, they merely expressing their right of expression. So that is automatically covered under the right to freedom of speech and expression. In 1984, a law commission was under chairmanship of Justice K.K. Mathur was appointed to find out whether freedom of speech and expression under Article 19 of the Constitution can be extended to Indian company and corporation. The commission recommended to extend the right to speech and extension to Indian company and corporation by adding an explanation to the Article 19. However, it is still not incorporated. So, qua reasonable restrictions, Prime Minister Nehru once said, you may define democracy in hundreds of ways, but surely one of its definition is self-discipline of the community. The less the imposed discipline, and the more the self-discipline, and higher the development of democracy. So these reasonable restrictions which are put with Article 19 as clause 2 is something needed for the community welfare. I would like to sum up today that this freedom of speech and expression is essential for pursuit of truth, indispensable for development of one's individuality, and essential for the success of parliamentary democracy. This is mother of all freedom and rights. This is a natural human rights which has been even recognized by the international organization and conventions in a very categorical terms, where India is also a signatory. So this Article 19 clause 2, the reasonable restriction is for the community, whereas the right to freedom given under a clause 1 for freedom of speech and expression is the backbone of the freedom of the society, freedom of the individual. Thank you very much for being with me and watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, comment about the contents of the video for improving it. I'll be thankful to you. Thank you very much. Namaskar.